A lot of monsters in D&D are cute and cuddly, the kind of creature you beg your dungeon master to let you adopt. But some of them are weird, gross, horrific creatures that stretch credulity. The monsters on this list are the second category, comprised of strange creatures that either could never exist or should never exist for our sanity's sake. Starting off our list with brain-dripping cerebrospinal fluid, at number 10, we have the Intellect Devourer from the Monster Manual. You might be familiar with this monster from playing Baldur's Gate 3. In that game, you'd be forgiven for finding it relatively cute, but this creature is bizarre at best. This brain on legs can literally sense the presence of intelligent life forms nearby, almost as if it had a nose for expelling cerebral fluid. In fact, it doesn't even have eyes, a nose, or ears. Intellect Devourers can sense things around them using psychic powers, which is itself an oddity. They can also stun anything with the brain by eating their thoughts like they're a hot cuisine. And if you get knocked out near one of these things, or if they catch you sleeping, they can eat your brain and then replace it with themselves, puppeting you like a gross, fleshy marionette. The only way to fix the problem is if someone wishes for your brain back. Otherwise, unless your DM is very kind and allows for a regenerate spell to regenerate your brain as if it were a severed limb after the Intellect Devourer is forced out by protection from evil and good, then it's not going to happen. And if you don't have a 9th level spell or a Ring of 3 Wishes, my best advice for you is to start planning your next character, because a lot of their bite has been taken by appearing in one of the most popular video games of 2023. And because aside from being a weird brain creature that can take the place of your brain, they aren't that much weirder than your average aberration. The Intellect Devourer only earns a number 10 on our list. With a face only a mother could love at number 9, we have the Choker from Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes. These lanky fellows don't have bones, but instead are packed with cartilage. What this means is they can squeeze through 4-inch gaps despite being 3 feet tall. They have really long tentacle arms and legs with grippers on the end that allow them to hold onto walls and ceilings with ease. These tentacles are unnaturally long, somewhere around 10 feet long, and allow them to grab unsuspecting travelers from beneath them, choking the life out of them from the safety of their perch. And that's just their abilities. If you look at them, they look like aliens with small black eyes, ear holes on the side of their heads, and mouths filled with sharp teeth. When they talk, they communicate in unnatural howls that will chill your blood and fill you with dread. But, you may think, I would have to be incredibly unlucky to fall victim to a choker. Not true. In fact, the choker is smart enough to leave a body underneath its perch so that when you go to investigate, it can grab its next victim to choke out. So the next time you're wandering a cave, forest, or tunnel, and you see a dead body on the ground unattended, waiting to be looted, check the walls and ceilings first, just to be safe. Floating its way into number 8 on this list is the Grell from the Monster Manual. Another brain that makes this list, but this one floats in the air with 10 tentacles. Say that 10 times fast, hovering beneath it. These tentacles end in barbs that you can use to inject its prey with a paralytic poison. And once it has its prey paralyzed, it'll eat you with its beak while it holds your paralyzed body in place with its tentacles. Yeah, for some reason, this bizarre aberration has a beak growing from its brain. No eyes or ears, just a beak like a hawk. But that doesn't stop it from hearing. Actually, it has a really good sense of hearing and can feel vibrations on its brain, in the grossest way I can think of to get blindsight. It does have one very cool ability. The same feature that allows it to feel vibrations allows it to sense electrical fields, which means the Grell can absorb electricity harmlessly. However, these creatures, much like the Choker, are ambush predators. They like to float into places where you won't be able to see them and then attack from hidden locations, dragging its paralyzed foe off to its hideaway, making them much worse than a Choker to be ambushed by. Especially because they can form covens, which is what groups of them are called. Instead of encountering one, you might find 4 or 5, causing you to watch your friends get paralyzed and dragged into the darkness beyond the range of the light before one comes for you. Now, they are smart enough to know what is and isn't prey, so if you're clearly beyond their capabilities, they may just leave you alone and try to swoop in and steal away the creatures you're fighting in its home for food while those creatures are distracted. And if you happen to be able to communicate with them in their native tongue, you may get the rare chance to see them withdraw the barbs from their tentacles and use them as manipulators like a weird beak brain octopus. But be warned, these creatures might seem like cute octopi, touching things with their tentacles, but the instant you let your guard down, you may find yourself dragged off to be devoured by beaks. And at number 7, hidden in plain sight, we have the Roper from the Monster Manual. This fleshy stalagmite-looking creature has the ability to disguise itself as, you guessed it, a stalagmite or stalactite, depending on its position on the floor or ceiling respectively. While looking like a piece of stone might make you think it can't move, you would be wrong. It can move slowly at a rate of 10 feet per round, and can climb across walls and ceilings just as easily as the ground. How does it move? Well, it has a tiny cilia on the bottom of it that lets it move. And if you don't know what cilia are, they are what some of your tissue cells have on the outside that let them move around inside the body. They're mostly used for movement by protozoa, making this creature like a giant single-celled organism, moving around on thousands of tiny eyelashes. It also has 6 tendrils that can attack independently of the main body to destroy, but regenerates one every round, and destroying them doesn't actually cause harm to this thing. The tendrils are used to restrain its opposition, and it is very hard to break through the restraint once you've been held. Which means about the only time you really want to destroy these tendrils is to free your friends or other victims from this thing's clutches. Now, thinking about other B-tentacle monsters might have you thinking this thing can reach out 5, maybe 10 feet from itself with these tendrils. But you would be very wrong. It can grab from as far as 50 feet away and can reel you in like a fishing line to its waiting, hungry mouth. Luckily, these creatures are really only found in the Underdark most times, so if you don't delve too deeply like a greedy Tolkien-esque dwarf, you should be fine. Because the weirdest creatures are always found in the deep water, at number 6, we have the Aboleth from the Monster Manual. This fishy aberration can be found in underground aquifers and lakes, looking something like a deep-sea fish mixed with a squid and a bottom feeder, with several rows of sharp teeth in their mouth. Now, while this is gross, what's worse is that this thing emits mucus like an aura around it. So even touching it or being near it for too long can change your lungs into gills. If it strikes you with its tentacles while outside of water, you can't regain HP. And during that time, every 10 minutes, take acid damage as your bodies slowly eat away unless someone douses your body with water. Aboleths talk telepathically, and if it does speak with you telepathically, it automatically knows your greatest desire and will use that information in order to trick you, trapping you in the water as its slave forever. Oh, did I not mention that part? It has the magical ability to take control of you permanently. You only can reattempt the save if you take damage or are at least 1 mile away from the aberration. As long as you're charmed, you are its slave, and it demands your worship like a water deity. Now, as if that all wasn't enough, so long as you're within its lair, which it hardly ever leaves, the Aboleth also has access to phantasmal force, control over the water in order to pull creatures outside of it in it, and the ability to physically damage any creature of the water anywhere within 90 feet of it. But, I hear you ask, if all of this is true, how will I know what water to stay away from? How will I know what waters have Aboleths in them? Good question, dear listener, as the very presence of an Aboleth changes the environment in strange and gross ways. Any underground surface within a mile of the Aboleth's lair is a slimy, wet, covered in gross mucus. Any water within a mile of the lair is foul and makes you throw it back up within minutes of getting it down. And anywhere the Aboleth has seen or is currently within line of sight of a creature charmed by an Aboleth within a mile of its lair, the Aboleth can create an illusion of itself that it can use to telepathically communicate from, as well as see and speak from as if it were present. So, if you drink foul water and throw it up straight away, feel gross mucus all over the walls, floor, and ceiling, or you see a floating eldritch fish that talks to your brain and promises your wildest dreams will come true if you'll only swim with it, you know you're near an Aboleth and should leave post-haste. Yesterday if possible. Changing things up to include something that isn't an aberration on this list, at number 5, we have the Alkilith from Mordenkainen Presents Monsters of the Multiverse. This demon, which was originally printed in Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, looks like a patch of green moss or fungus, and prefers to grow around doors, windows, or other openings. It can move a surprisingly fast 40 feet per movement, and it can squeeze through spaces 1 inch wide with relative ease. If it doesn't move, it is almost impossible to distinguish it as a monster, instead seeing it as a patch of fungus or slime. While you're dealing with other things, if you haven't noticed it yet, it will start making you confused, giving you either disadvantage on your next d20 roll, or putting you under the effects of the confusion spell, making your actions often random and purposeless. Once you've found it, it's very often difficult to remove, having resistance to most energy damage and to non-magical weapons, plus having general magic resistance. Luckily, all it can do is strike out at you with its acidic tentacles, so if you're prepared for the acid, you'll make out just fine. Now, why does it seek to be hidden so badly? Because if it stays in a place for somewhere from 1 to 5 weeks, the door or window it covers becomes a portal to the abyss, and starts letting out demons into the world to wreak havoc. That's right, this creature is a living portal, making it markedly strange. The grossest entry on this list by far, at number 4, we have the Star-Spawn Larva Mage from Mordenkainen Presents Monsters of the Multiverse. Originally printed in Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes 2, the name of this creature is very innocuous. Larva Mage surely means that it's a small bug that pupates and becomes something larger, right? Unfortunately not. This is a mass of wriggling worms that used to be a cultist of some elder evil. An entity like Caius, the worm that walks, this ancient entity is said to bring about an apocalypse called the Age of Worms, where undead rise en masse and destroy the world. When a cultist becomes a larva mage, they lose their entire identity, becoming this horribly intelligent mass of worms that exists only to serve the alien purpose of the elder evil that spawned it. At least they cover the swarm up, wearing robes and a white mask. But this whole creature is a thing of nightmares. It can cover you with a mass of worms, leaving you blinded and unable to move under the swarm. And while beneath the swarm, it can start eating you, slowly consuming your body with its worms. It can also dominate your will and turn you into a puppet by casting Dominate Monster, and it gets stronger as the creatures around it fail saving throws, including its own allies. And not only that, but it can also send bolts of Eldritch Force at you from up to 60 feet away. So you need to get in close. Except once you do, you're vulnerable to a plague of worms that coats you in worms. And the Larva Mage can also make slam attacks with its wormy mass with a 10-foot reach, poisoning you from contact with its gross body. Clearly, the best option is just to kill this thing with fire, right? You would be mostly correct, but when the Larva Mage dies, it turns into a regular swarm of worms. And unless you kill that, it forms back from the swarm after a day. The Star Spawn Larva Mage exists as a constant reminder that sometimes there's no kill like overkill. A slimy manifestation of the victim complex at number 3, we have the various ages of the Oblex from Mordenkainen Presents Monsters of the Multiverse. Rather than pick one stage of development, instead we'll cover the whole life cycle of the Oblex, a monster originally printed in Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes. The Oblex is an ooze made by mind flayers, because of course they are. Almost all the worst things in the world were made by mind flayers not leaving well enough alone. This ooze not only eats your body, but also your mind and very personality. They can use it to trick others, and once they've eaten enough sentient creatures, they can create a duplicate of anyone they've consumed that looks and acts exactly like that person. The only way you can tell a duplicate from a real person is the faint smell of sulfur and a thin strand of slime that attaches them to the main body. It uses these duplicates as an extension of its body to distract you, and to use its psychic powers to listen to your thoughts and know just what to say, or to charm or dominate your mind and convince you to just give it a hug, or to join your loved one inside the Oblex. Once you get old enough, they can also teleport up to 500 feet using Dimension Door, and can force you to enter their mass with telekinesis. And they don't even need you to enter their body to start consuming you. They can consume your mind as long as you're just adjacent to them. And if they consume enough, they will knock you out so they can eat your body as well. They learn the skills and languages of the people they drain, meaning they can use those skills against your allies while you suffer from the loss. Once they've consumed too many people's memories, they split a personality off from their body to become a new Oblex, and the cycle continues. They can be found in the Underdark, but they've also managed to work their way into swamps and into some urban environments. So take care when entering alleyways and cities that you don't know. Luckily, like most creepy crawlies, these creatures can be fought off with fire, so make sure to burn them until no trace remains. One of the most classic D&D monsters, the winner of innumerable staring contests, at number 2, we have the Beholder from the Monster Manual. A floating ball with one central eye and 10 eye stalks, Beholders are isolationists by nature, in fear or hatred of all other living things. They all have some unique attributes that are only theirs, and since they are convinced that their form is perfect, they ironically consider other Beholders to be abominations, meaning they will almost never work together. How is the Beholder born then if they refuse to interact with other Beholders? They are born from the dreams of another Beholder. When a Beholder dreams, it can warp and alter reality, including to such an extent that it creates another of its kind, sharing the same self-hatred that plagues their whole kind. The other name for Beholders is Eye Tyrant because they tend to enslave an entire empire's worth of creatures to serve it, sometimes taking over existing human settlements or creating vast empires from nothing. Their layers are filled with their paranoia to such an extent that anyone within a mile feels that paranoia, as if someone is constantly looking over their shoulder. And because the nature of a Beholder is to warp reality and bend it to their will, their very dreams can create and remove objects within the territory of their domain, changing writing on walls or signs, creating small objects from thin air, or even changing the texture of a surface from smooth to rough. If you fight them within their lair, they can warp reality during the fight, creating slimy surfaces where there was previously none, sprouting hands from walls to grab anyone near them, or even opening a replica of one of their eyes on a surface temporarily to fire an eye ray. Their eye stalks each fire a different ray, while their central eye emits an anti-magic cone. At least this is normally the case. Just like beholders can all look different, they all have different eyes that function differently as well. You might be prepared for the charm ray, but they may instead have a banishment ray. Instead of being able to drain your life force with enervation ray, it might have the ability to change your shape with a polymorph ray. Because of this, every beholder must be treated with caution and only fought in the direst of circumstances. Sloshing its way into the #1 spot is the Gibbering Mouther from the Monster Manual. While most of the creatures on this list are multifaceted and varied, this creature earns its #1 spot not by being a smorgasbord of weird, but instead by being one weird, very strong creature. This aberration acts something like an ooze, slowly crawling across the ground or through water towards further prey. This creature is a mass of every victim that has ever been absorbed. Not consumed, but absorbed by it. It is covered in mouths and eyes, looking like liquid flesh coated in eyes and mouths. Reality itself warps nearby them, leading the ground to become doughy and hard to maneuver in. Any creature nearby has to fight to maintain control of their actions, as the chorus of madness emitted by the myriad of mouths of this multifarious monster makes them lose their mind. Once it has driven your mind from control, it begins biting you with its many mouths, slowly breaking you down and you become the same fleshy goop it's made of and are absorbed into it to become part of it. These creatures seem very weak, and usually are, but they have an older brother, as if it were, in the form of the Gibbering Orb. Last printed in the Epic Level Handbook in 3.5 edition, these orbs can speak in every language and have a myriad of new powers from their maddening insight. No one knows where these huge orbs come from, but they travel from plane to plane, consuming every living creature they come across. Are they the ancestors of the Gibbering Mouther, their creator? Or are they a Gibbering Mouther that has consumed enough minds to develop a maddening insight into reality? Either way, they are frighteningly intelligent, constantly speaking in every language simultaneously, speaking hundreds of sentences that overlap and layer in a way that drive others insane. Destroy any Gibbering Mouther you encounter with prejudice, because the off chance they grow to become a mass large enough to form one of these orbs is enough to be cautious and keep them contained. And those are some of the weirdest creatures in D&D. Can you think of any other that are weirder, or older monsters from other editions that are even weirder? If so, let us know down in the comments below.